despair. Natalie Brooks stood frozen on the curb, her arms wrapped around her 8-year-old daughter Sophie, while her 5-year-old son Caleb pressed against her legs. Behind them, 3 garbage bags held everything they owned in the world. The landlord had changed the locks 2 hours ago. "Mama, I'm cold," Sophie whispered, her teeth chattering. The little girl wore only a thin pink jacket over her school uniform. Caleb's SpongeBob t-shirt clung to his small body, soaked through. Natalie felt her heart splitting open. This was it. The absolute bottom. She had lost her job at the medical billing company 3 months ago when they downsized. Her savings lasted exactly 47 days. The unemployment checks barely covered food, let alone rent. She had called every shelter in the city. All full. Her credit cards were maxed. Her phone had 17 missed calls from bill collectors. "We're going to be okay," Natalie said, but her voice cracked. She didn't believe her own words anymore. A black Mercedes sedan slowed beside them. Natalie tensed, pulling her children closer. The window rolled down, revealing a man in his late 30s with kind gray eyes and dark hair touched with silver at the temples. He wore an expensive navy suit that probably cost more than her last 3 months of rent combined. "Excuse me," the man said gently. "I don't mean to intrude, but I couldn't help noticing. Are you all right? Do you need help?" Natalie's first instinct was to say no, to protect her pride, to refuse. But then Caleb coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made her stomach clench with fear. Sophie's lips were turning blue. Pride couldn't keep her babies warm. Pride couldn't put a roof over their heads tonight. She started, her voice barely audible over the rain. "We just got evicted. I don't have anywhere to take my kids." The man's expression shifted to one of deep concern. Without hesitation he said, "Please let me help. I have a guest house that's empty. You and your children can stay there tonight, get warm and dry. No strings attached. I promise I'm not trying to hurt you. I just can't drive away knowing children are out in this weather." Every nerve in Natalie's body screamed caution. Stranger danger. Don't trust random men in expensive cars. But her maternal instinct screamed louder. Her children needed shelter. They needed warmth. They needed safety. And something in this man's eyes told her he meant exactly what he said. "Why would you help us?" Natalie asked, searching his face. "Because someone should," he replied simply. "And because I can. My name is Jonathan Pierce. I live 10 minutes from here. I have a 3-bedroom guest house with heat, hot water, and a kitchen. It's sitting empty. Your children are freezing. Please let me help." Natalie looked down at Sophie, whose whole body was shaking now. She looked at Caleb, who had stopped complaining and gone ominously quiet. She thought about the cold night ahead, about trying to keep them warm in a bus station or under a bridge. She thought about pneumonia and hypothermia and all the terrible things that could happen to homeless children. She made her decision. "Okay," Natalie said, her voice stronger now. "Thank you. We accept your help. Thank you so much." Jonathan's face broke into a relieved smile. He got out of the car with an umbrella, not caring that his expensive suit was getting soaked as he helped load their garbage bags into his trunk. He opened the back door and helped Sophie and Caleb inside, cranking up the heat immediately. "There are blankets in the back seat," he told them gently. "Wrap up and get warm." As Natalie slid into the passenger seat, she felt tears mixing with the rain on her face. She didn't know this man. She didn't know why he was helping. But she knew with absolute certainty that he had just saved her children's lives. The car was warm and smelled like leather and pine. Classical music played softly from the speakers. Jonathan drove carefully through the rain-slicked streets, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at the children. "How old are they?" he asked quietly. "Sophie is 8. Caleb just turned 5 last month," Natalie answered, her voice thick with emotion. "Beautiful names," Jonathan said. "I have a daughter. I have. She's away at boarding school. 13 years old now." Natalie heard something in his voice, some deep sadness that matched her own. But before she could ask, he was turning into a long driveway lined with trees. The headlights revealed a massive iron gate that opened automatically. Beyond it, a sprawling estate spread out like something from a movie. "This is your home?" Natalie breathed. "Yes," Jonathan said simply. "And for tonight it's yours too." They drove past the main house, a beautiful stone mansion with lights glowing warmly in the windows. Behind it, nestled among trees, stood a smaller house that was still larger than any apartment Natalie had ever lived in. Jonathan parked and quickly came around to help the children out. He unlocked the guest house door and flipped on lights, revealing a cozy, beautifully furnished space. There was a living room with a plush green sofa, a full kitchen with modern appliances, and a hallway that led to bedrooms. "The heat is already on," Jonathan said, adjusting the thermostat higher. "There are towels in the bathroom. Fresh linens in the closet. The kitchen is stocked with basics, and I'll have groceries delivered first thing in the morning. Please make yourselves at home." Sophie and Caleb stood dripping on the hardwood floor, their eyes wide with wonder. They had never been in a place this nice. "Can we really stay here?" Sophie asked in a small voice. Jonathan knelt down to her level, his expensive suit now thoroughly ruined. "Yes, sweetheart. You can stay as long as you need to. You're safe here." Natalie felt her throat closing with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you. I don't have money to pay you. I can't repay this." Jonathan stood and looked at her with those kind gray eyes. "You don't need to repay kindness. That's not how it works. Get your children warm and fed. Get some rest. Tomorrow we can talk about what comes next. But tonight just be here. Be safe. Be warm." He handed her a business card with his phone number. "Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. I'm in the main house." He paused at the door. "There are clothes in the master bedroom closet. My late wife's things. She was about your size. Please use whatever you need." Late wife. Those two words hung in the air, explaining the sadness Natalie had heard in his voice. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "So am I," Jonathan replied. "But helping you tonight, that makes me feel like she's still here somehow. Like the good we do continues." He smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "Good night, Natalie." "Good night, Sophie and Caleb." After he left, Natalie locked the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to cry. But these were different tears. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming emotion at the kindness of a stranger. Sophie tugged at her wet sleeve. "Mama, can we take hot baths?" Natalie laughed through her tears and scooped both children into her arms. "Yes, babies. Hot baths. And then warm beds. And tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." As she ran water in the enormous bathtub and helped her children out of their wet clothes, Natalie sent up a silent prayer of thanks. She had been at rock bottom, standing in the rain with nowhere to go. And a stranger had stopped. A man who had every reason to drive past, to mind his own business, to not get involved. But Jonathan Pierce had stopped. He had helped. He had opened his home without hesitation. And for the first time in months, Natalie felt the tiny, fragile stirring of hope. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know how long she could stay or what would happen next. But tonight her children were safe. Tonight they were warm. Tonight they had a place to sleep. And sometimes, in the darkest moments, that was enough to keep going. Have you ever felt completely hopeless, like there was no way forward? What would you do if a stranger offered you shelter when you had nowhere else to turn? Please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone who needs hope today. Natalie woke to sunlight streaming through white curtains. For one disoriented moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. The rain, the eviction, Jonathan Pierce and his impossible kindness. She sat up in the enormous bed, still wearing the soft blue pajamas she'd found in the closet the night before. They had belonged to Jonathan's wife, and Natalie had felt strange putting them on at first. But her own clothes had been soaked, and she needed something clean and dry. The bedroom was beautiful, decorated in soft grays and whites, with artwork on the walls and fresh flowers on the dresser. Flowers. Someone maintained this house, kept it ready even though no one lived here. The thought made her chest ache. Soft voices drifted from the kitchen. Natalie threw on a maroon robe she'd found hanging in the bathroom and padded down the hallway in bare feet. Sophie and Caleb sat at the kitchen table, still in their borrowed pajamas, eating pancakes. Across from them sat Jonathan, now dressed casually in jeans and a green sweater, a cup of coffee steaming in front of him. "Mama?" Caleb shouted when he saw her. "Mr. Jonathan made us pancakes. They have chocolate chips." Jonathan stood quickly, looking slightly embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I knocked but you were still sleeping. The children were awake and I thought I'd make them breakfast. I hope that's all right." "More than all right," Natalie said, her voice still rough with sleep. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Jonathan said simply. He gestured to the counter where coffee was brewing and more pancakes were stacked on a plate. "Please sit. We can talk after." Natalie poured herself coffee and sat down, watching her children devour their breakfast with an enthusiasm she hadn't seen in months. When was the last time they'd had a meal they truly enjoyed? When was the last time they'd woken up without worry? After the children finished, Jonathan showed them the backyard through the kitchen window. There's a swing set back there and a sandbox. Would you two like to go play for a bit while I talk to your mom? Sophie looked at Natalie for permission. Can we, Mama? Stay where I can see you from the window, Natalie said. The children raced outside, their laughter floating back through the open door. Jonathan refilled both their coffee cups and sat back down. In the morning light, Natalie could see the fine lines around his eyes, the evidence of grief he carried. But there was also a warmth there, a gentleness that put her at ease. I want to talk to you about your situation, Jonathan began. And I want you to know that everything I'm about to offer comes with no obligations. You can say yes or no, and either way you and your children can stay here as long as you need. Natalie's heart began to race. Okay. I run a charitable foundation, Jonathan explained. The Pierce Foundation. My wife, Catherine, started it 5 years before she passed. We help families in crisis. Homeless families, domestic violence survivors, people struggling with medical bills. Catherine was passionate about it. He paused, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. Since she died 18 months ago, I've kept the foundation running, but it's been mechanical. I go through the motions, but I've lost the heart of it. The personal connection that Catherine brought to everything. Jonathan looked directly at Natalie. I need someone to manage the foundation's day-to-day operations. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle, to need help, to be at rock bottom. Someone with compassion and intelligence and determination. Someone like you. Natalie's mouth fell open. You want to offer me a job? You don't even know me. I know that yesterday, even though you were terrified and didn't know me from anyone, you accepted help when your children needed it, Jonathan said. I know that this morning, even though you woke up in a stranger's guest house, you trusted me with your children long enough to let them have breakfast. I know that last night when you said thank you, you meant it from your soul. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. But I don't have any experience with foundations or charity work, Natalie protested, even as her heart soared with hope. I worked in medical billing. Which means you understand healthcare costs, insurance, and administrative systems, Jonathan countered. All crucial for what we do. The rest I can teach you. Catherine would have loved you. She always said the best advocates are people who've lived through hard times themselves. He slid a folder across the table. Here's what I'm offering, a full-time position as foundation manager. The salary is $60,000 a year to start, with health insurance, retirement benefits, and performance bonuses. You can continue living here in the guest house rent-free while you get back on your feet, or as long as you like. There's a good school district here for Sophie and Caleb. I'll cover their enrollment fees and supplies. Natalie stared at the folder, unable to process what she was hearing. Yesterday she'd been standing in the rain with nothing. Today she was being offered a job, a home, stability for her children. It was too much. It was too good. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing all this? Jonathan's eyes grew distant. Catherine died of cancer. Ovarian cancer. By the time they found it, it was stage 4. I would have given everything I owned to save her, but money can't cure everything. The last thing she said to me was, keep helping people. Keep spreading kindness. Don't let grief make you stop living. He blinked rapidly, clearing his throat. For 18 months I've been going through the motions. This big house, all this money, and I'm more alone than I've ever been. Then yesterday I was driving home from a terrible board meeting. I was thinking about how meaningless everything felt. And then I saw you in the rain with your children, and something in me just knew I had to stop. I had to help. And for the first time since Catherine died, I felt like I had a purpose again. Tears streamed down Natalie's cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Jonathan said simply. Take the job. Give yourself and your children a chance at stability. Let me honor Catherine's memory by continuing her work. And let yourself accept help without guilt. That's all I ask. Natalie thought about Sophie and Caleb playing in the backyard. She thought about the months of struggle, of watching her children go hungry, of the terror of being evicted. She thought about pride and how it had nearly destroyed her. She thought about this man sitting across from her, offering her not charity but opportunity. Not pity but partnership. She took a deep breath and met his eyes. Yes, I accept. I'll take the job. I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired. I'll pour everything I have into this foundation. And I will be grateful every single day for this chance. Jonathan's smile was like sunrise after a long, dark night. Welcome to the Pierce Foundation, Natalie. When can you start? Today, Natalie said immediately. Right now. I'm ready. They spent the rest of the morning at Jonathan's home office, reviewing foundation files and operations. Catherine Pierce had built an impressive organization, helping over 300 families in the past 5 years. But Jonathan was right. Without her vision and personal touch, things had become routine and impersonal. We need to bring back the human element, Natalie said, reading through case files. These are people, not numbers. Each one has a story. Exactly, Jonathan said, his eyes lighting up. That's what Catherine always said. She knew everyone's name, everyone's situation. She followed up personally. They worked through lunch, ordering pizza for the children who had come back inside, tired and happy from playing. Sophie sat on the floor coloring while Caleb built towers with wooden blocks he'd found in a toy chest. Around 3 o'clock, an elderly woman entered through the front door without knocking. She was small and elegant, with white hair perfectly styled and sharp blue eyes that immediately found Natalie. "Jonathan, darling, whose children are playing in the garden?" she asked, then stopped when she saw Natalie. "Oh, I didn't realize you had company." Jonathan stood quickly. "Mother. This is Natalie Brooks and her children, Sophie and Caleb. They're staying in the guest house. Natalie is the new foundation manager." Dorothy Pierce's eyebrows rose. "Is that so?" She walked closer, studying Natalie with an intensity that was slightly unnerving. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "Well, it's about time someone brought life back to this mausoleum. I'm Dorothy Pierce, dear." Jonathan's mother, an occasional pain in his neck. "Mother," Jonathan protested, but he was smiling. Dorothy ignored him and bent down to Sophie's level. "And what are you coloring, sweetheart?" "A house," Sophie said shyly. "A house with lots of windows so the sunshine can come in." Dorothy's eyes grew misty. "That's beautiful, Angel. Just beautiful." She straightened and looked at Natalie with an expression that was impossible to read. "Jonathan, might I have a word with you? In private?" They stepped into the next room, but their voices carried. "She's lovely," Dorothy said. "And those children are precious. But son, are you sure about this?" "More sure than I've been about anything since Catherine died," Jonathan replied firmly. "She needs help. I can provide it. And working with her makes me feel alive again, Mother. For the first time in 18 months, I woke up this morning with a sense of purpose." "I'm not questioning your intentions," Dorothy said gently. "I'm just worried about your heart. You're vulnerable right now. And she's a beautiful woman with adorable children. I don't want you getting hurt." "I know what I'm doing," Jonathan said. "This is about helping someone who needs it. Nothing more." But as Natalie sat there, listening to their conversation, she wondered if Jonathan was being entirely honest with himself. And more concerning, she wondered if she was being honest with herself about her own growing feelings for this impossibly kind man who had saved her life. Monday morning arrived bright and clear. Natalie woke early, anxiety and excitement battling in her chest. Today was her first official day as foundation manager. Today she had to prove she could do this job. She dressed carefully in clothes Dorothy Pierce had brought by the day before. A red blouse and black slacks that fit perfectly. "Can't have my new daughter-in-law looking shabby," Dorothy had said, then caught herself. "I mean my son's new employee." Goodness, what a slip of the tongue. The comment had made both Jonathan and Natalie blush furiously. Now, standing in front of the mirror, Natalie barely recognized herself. It had been so long since she'd looked professional, put together. She twisted her hair into a neat bun and applied the makeup Dorothy had also provided. When she stepped out of the bedroom, Sophie gasped. "Mama, you look so pretty." "Like a princess," Caleb agreed solemnly. Natalie laughed and kissed both their heads. They were already dressed in new school clothes Jonathan had ordered online. Sophie wore a blue dress and Caleb wore khaki pants with a red polo shirt. They looked healthy and happy, so different from the frightened, shivering children from just days ago. "Ready for your first day at a new school?" Natalie asked, trying to keep the nervousness from her voice. "Will the kids be nice?" Sophie asked quietly. Natalie knelt down and took both her children's hands. "Some will be and some might not be. But you two are smart and kind and brave. You've been through hard things and that makes you strong. Just be yourselves and you'll make friends. I promise." A knock sounded at the door. Jonathan stood there, dressed in a charcoal suit that made him look every inch the successful businessman he was. But his smile was warm and genuine. "Good morning. Everyone ready?" He looked at Natalie and paused. That's a good color on you. Professional." Natalie felt heat creep up her neck. "Thank you." Dorothy picked it out. "My mother has excellent taste," Jonathan said. "And apparently no boundaries. I apologize if she's been overwhelming." "She's been wonderful," Natalie said honestly. Dorothy had visited twice more over the weekend, bringing clothes, toiletries, and more importantly, companionship. She'd sat with Natalie for hours, sharing stories about Catherine and the foundation, making her feel welcome and valued. They took Jonathan's car to the school first. Pinewood Elementary was a beautiful brick building with a playground that made Caleb's eyes light up. The principal, Mrs. Harrison, met them at the entrance. "Mr. Pierce, always a pleasure," she said, shaking Jonathan's hand. Then she turned to Natalie and the children with a warm smile. "You must be the Brooks family. Welcome to Pinewood. We're delighted to have Sophie and Caleb joining us." Sophie and Caleb were taken to their respective classrooms by friendly teachers. Sophie looked back once, her eyes wide with nervousness, and Natalie gave her an encouraging wave. Then they were gone, swallowed up by the bustling school day. "They'll be fine," Jonathan said quietly, sensing Natalie's worry. "This is a good school. The teachers are caring and the kids are generally kind." "How do you know so much about it?" Natalie asked as they walked back to the car. "My daughter Lily went here before we sent her to boarding school," Jonathan said. "Catherine wanted her close to home, but after Catherine died, Lily struggled. She asked to go to school in Vermont where her best friend goes. I visit her every month." "That must be hard," Natalie said. "Being away from her." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "It is. But she needed space to grieve and I wasn't handling things well. I was so lost in my own grief that I couldn't help her with hers. Sending her away felt like the biggest failure of my life, but she's thriving there. So maybe it was the right choice even if it was painful." They drove to the foundation office, located in downtown in a modern glass building. The Pierce Foundation occupied the entire third floor. When they stepped off the elevator, Natalie saw a large reception area with the foundation's logo on the wall, a simple tree with spreading branches. A young woman at the reception desk looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce." "Good morning, Andrea. This is Natalie Brooks, our new foundation manager." "Natalie, Andrea handles our front desk and phone lines. She's been with us for 3 years." Andrea's smile widened. "It's wonderful to meet you. We've been hoping Mr. Pierce would hire someone for this position. We've been trying to manage everything ourselves, but it's been challenging." "I'm looking forward to working with you," Natalie said, meaning it. Andrea seemed genuine and kind, another person in Jonathan's orbit who reflected his values. Jonathan gave Natalie a tour of the office. There were 6 staff members total. Andrea at reception, 2 case managers named Helen and Tom who worked directly with families, a financial officer named Patricia, and 2 administrative assistants, Carlos and Jennifer. Everyone greeted Natalie warmly, clearly relieved to have dedicated leadership again. Helen, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, pulled Natalie aside. "Mrs. Pierce was the heart of this place," Helen said quietly. "When she died we all grieved. Mr. Pierce has kept everything running, but he's been going through the motions. We need someone who cares, who can bring back that personal touch. I hope that's you." "I'll do my best," Natalie promised. "I know what it's like to need help. I was standing in the rain with my children just days ago, evicted and hopeless. Mr. Pierce saved us. Now I want to help save others." Helen's eyes filled with tears. "Then you're exactly what we need." Jonathan set Natalie up in a large office with windows overlooking the city. Catherine's presence was everywhere. Photos on the walls of families the foundation had helped, thank you letters framed and displayed, a bookshelf filled with resources about poverty, housing, and family services. "This was her office," Jonathan said softly. "I haven't changed anything. If you'd like to make it your own, please do. But I thought you might want to understand who she was first." Natalie walked slowly around the room, studying each photo, each letter. She saw a beautiful blonde woman with a radiant smile in several pictures, always surrounded by children or families. Catherine Pierce had been genuinely happy doing this work. "She was beautiful," Natalie said. "Inside and out," Jonathan agreed. "She had this ability to make everyone feel seen and valued. She remembered birthdays, children's names, little details that mattered. That's what I want to bring back to this foundation." They spent the morning reviewing active cases. There were currently 42 families receiving various forms of assistance: rent support, medical bill help, job training, childcare subsidies. Each file told a story of struggle and hope. "This family," Natalie said, pointing to the Martinez file. "They've been getting rent assistance for 6 months. Has anyone checked on their progress toward self-sufficiency?" Jonathan looked embarrassed. "Probably not. We've been so focused on immediate needs that we haven't been great about long-term planning." "That's what I can help with," Natalie said, her mind already working. "We need to not just help people survive but help them build toward stability." Job training, education, financial literacy. We should be empowering people, not just supporting them indefinitely. Jonathan's face lit up. Yes, exactly. That's what Catherine always said. She wanted to give people a hand up, not just a handout. They worked through lunch, ordering sandwiches from a nearby deli. Natalie was so absorbed in learning the foundation systems that she barely noticed the time passing. Finally, at 3 o'clock, Jonathan reminded her that they needed to pick up the children. Back at the school, Sophie and Caleb came running out, their faces bright with excitement. "Mama, I made a friend," Sophie exclaimed. "Her name is Brittany and she likes art too." "My teacher is nice," Caleb reported. "And we had pizza for lunch." In the car ride back to the estate, the children chattered nonstop about their day. Natalie felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. They were adjusting. They were happy. This was working. That evening, after the children were fed and bathed and tucked into bed, Natalie sat on the guest house porch with a cup of tea. The main house glowed with warm light in the distance. She saw Jonathan's silhouette pass by a window. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan. "You did great today. Natural leader. Catherine would have liked you." Natalie smiled and typed back, "Thank you for this chance. I won't let you down." His response came quickly, "You already haven't. Sleep well." As Natalie prepared for bed that night, she thought about how much her life had changed in less than a week. She had gone from homeless to employed, from desperate to hopeful, from alone to surrounded by kindness. And at the center of it all was Jonathan Pierce, a man still grieving his wife but choosing to channel that grief into helping others. A man who had stopped in the rain when he could have driven by. A man who was giving her family a second chance at life. Natalie knew she was developing feelings for him beyond gratitude. She saw the way he looked at her children with genuine affection. She noticed how his smile reached his eyes when she contributed a good idea. She felt her heart skip when their hands accidentally touched over a shared document. But she also knew the complexity of the situation. He was her employer. He was still mourning his wife. She was financially dependent on him. Any romantic involvement would be complicated and potentially disastrous. So Natalie made a decision as she climbed into bed that night. She would keep her growing feelings to herself. She would focus on being the best foundation manager possible. She would show Jonathan that his faith in her was justified. And she would protect her heart, even as it insisted on opening to this impossibly kind man who had changed her life. 3 weeks into her new position, Natalie had transformed the foundation's operations. She had implemented a comprehensive tracking system for each family, scheduled regular check-ins, and created pathways to self-sufficiency for long-term clients. The Martinez family was her first success story. After meeting with them personally and understanding their situation, she had connected Mr. Martinez with a job training program for HVAC technicians. He had just completed his certification and landed a job paying $22 an hour. The family would transition off rent assistance within 3 months. "This is exactly what we needed," Helen said during a staff meeting. "Personal attention. Follow through. These families feel seen now, not just processed." Natalie felt pride warming her chest. She belonged here. She was good at this work. And more importantly, she was making a real difference. Jonathan had been mostly hands-off, trusting her to manage operations while he handled the board and fundraising. But every evening after the children were in bed, he would text her updates or questions about the day. Their text conversations had become a ritual Natalie looked forward to. "How was the Nguyen family meeting?" he would ask. "Heartbreaking but hopeful. Single mom, 3 kids, medical bills from son's asthma. I got them connected with better insurance options. You're amazing at this. Just doing my job. No, you're doing it with heart. There's a difference." Comments like that made Natalie's pulse quicken in ways she tried to ignore. She told herself it was just professional appreciation. Just kindness from a good boss. Nothing more. One Friday evening, Jonathan knocked on the guest house door just as Natalie was starting dinner. He looked nervous, his hands in his pockets. "I'm sorry to bother you at home," he began. Natalie laughed. "Jonathan, you own this home. You can never bother me here." He smiled, but the nervousness remained. "I wanted to invite you and the children to dinner tomorrow night. At the main house. My mother will be there and I thought it might be nice. We've been working together for weeks, but we haven't really spent time together outside the office. Unless you'd rather keep boundaries between work and personal time, which I completely understand. We'd love to come," Natalie said immediately, watching relief flood his face. "What time?" 6? "And please don't bring anything. Just yourselves." After he left, Natalie leaned against the door, her heart racing. It was just dinner. Just a friendly meal. But it felt like more. It felt like the beginning of something shifting between them. Saturday evening, Natalie dressed carefully in a green dress Dorothy had given her. Sophie wore her best blue dress, and Caleb wore a button-up shirt with his nicer pants. They walked across the grounds to the main house, the children practically skipping with excitement. Jonathan answered the door wearing jeans and a blue sweater, looking more relaxed than Natalie had ever seen him. Come in, come in. You all look wonderful. The main house was even more beautiful inside than Natalie had imagined. High ceilings, elegant furniture, artwork everywhere. But it also felt warm somehow, lived in and loved. Photos lined the hallway. Jonathan and Catherine on their wedding day, a little girl growing up in various staged portraits, family vacations at the beach. Dorothy was in the kitchen, wearing an apron and stirring something on the stove that smelled incredible. There's my favorite family, she exclaimed, hugging Sophie and Caleb. Jonathan, take everyone to the dining room. Dinner is almost ready. The dining room had a long table that could easily seat 12, but Dorothy had set it intimately at one end. Candles glowed on the table and soft music played from hidden speakers. Dinner was pot roast with vegetables, and it was the best meal Natalie had eaten in years. The children ate enthusiastically, and even Natalie, who had been nervous about the evening, found herself relaxing. Dorothy told stories about Jonathan as a child, much to his embarrassment and everyone else's amusement. He was so serious even as a boy, Dorothy said, laughing. Always trying to solve everyone's problems. Once, in 3rd grade, he started a club to help kids who forgot their lunch. He would share his own food until I had to start packing double lunches just to keep him fed. Mother, please, Jonathan groaned, but he was smiling. It's true. Even then, he had this instinct to help people. Catherine saw that in him the first day they met. She said, "That's a man who leads with his heart." And she was right. The mention of Catherine brought a brief silence. Then Sophie, with the innocent directness of children, asked, "Mr. Jonathan, do you miss your wife?" Natalie started to shush her, but Jonathan held up a hand. "It's okay," he said gently. He looked at Sophie with those kind gray eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. I miss her very much. Every single day." "My daddy left before Caleb was born," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "Mama says he had problems he couldn't fix. Do you think your wife would be sad that you're sad?" Jonathan's eyes grew misty. "That's a very wise question. No, I don't think she'd want me to be sad forever. Catherine would want me to be happy, to keep helping people, to live my life fully. She was always pushing me to embrace joy." "Then maybe you should try," Sophie said simply. "Mama says sometimes we have to choose to be happy, even when things are hard." Natalie wanted to disappear under the table, but Jonathan smiled at her with such warmth that her breath caught. "Your mama is very smart," he said. After dinner, the children played in the living room while the adults sat on the back patio with coffee. The night was cool but pleasant, stars scattered across the sky like scattered diamonds. "Natalie, I wanted to show you something," Jonathan said. He led her down a stone path to a garden area behind the house. Even in the moonlight, she could see it was beautiful. Roses everywhere, a small fountain, benches placed for contemplation. "Catherine's garden," Jonathan explained. "She planted every single rosebush herself. She would spend hours out here, tending them, talking to them. She said plants respond to love." "It's beautiful," Natalie whispered. "After she died, I couldn't come out here," Jonathan admitted. "It hurt too much. I hired gardeners to maintain it, but I stayed away. But lately I've been coming back. Sitting here. Talking to her, actually. Telling her about the foundation, about you and your children, about how life is slowly starting to feel worth living again." He turned to face Natalie, his expression vulnerable. "You've done that, you know. You and Sophie and Caleb. You've brought life back into this house, into the foundation, into me. I know it's only been a few weeks, but I want you to know how grateful I am. Not just for your work, but for your presence." Natalie's throat tightened with emotion. "Jonathan, you saved our lives. Literally. We were going to sleep on the street that night. My children were freezing. You stopped when most people would have driven by. Everything I am, everything I can offer, it's because you gave us a chance." "No," Jonathan said firmly. "I gave you an opportunity, but you're the one who took it and ran with it. You're the one who transformed the foundation. You're the one raising those incredible children. You did that. Your strength, your determination, your heart. That's all you, Natalie." They stood in the moonlit garden, the scent of roses surrounding them. Natalie felt the moment stretching, becoming something more than professional, more than friendly. There was an energy between them, a connection that went beyond gratitude or kindness. Jonathan reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. The gesture was tender, intimate, and it sent electricity through Natalie's entire body. "I should get the children home," she said quietly, though she didn't want to move. "Of course," Jonathan said, stepping back. "It's getting late." They walked back to the house in comfortable silence. Dorothy was reading to Sophie and Caleb on the couch, the children cuddled against her like they'd known her forever. "There you are," Dorothy said, looking between Jonathan and Natalie with a knowing smile. "We were just finishing the story." The walk back to the guest house was short, but Natalie's mind was racing. Something had shifted tonight. Something significant. The careful professional boundaries they'd maintained were beginning to blur. As she tucked her children into bed, Sophie said sleepily, "I like Mr. Jonathan, Mama. He's nice. And he looks at you the way the prince looks at the princess in my movies." "Hush, baby. Go to sleep," Natalie said, her cheeks burning. But as she lay in her own bed later that night, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't stop thinking about Jonathan's words, his touch, the way he'd looked at her in the garden. She couldn't stop wondering if maybe, just maybe, this impossible situation might become something beautiful. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Jonathan. "Thank you for tonight. For being here. For everything." Natalie typed and deleted 3 responses before finally settling on, "Thank you for having us. The children loved it. I loved it too." His response came immediately, "Same time next week? We'll be there." Natalie fell asleep smiling, hope blooming in her chest like the roses in Catherine's garden. The Saturday dinners became a weekly tradition. Every weekend, Natalie and the children would walk across the grounds to the main house, where Jonathan and Dorothy would have a meal prepared and stories ready to share. Sophie and Caleb thrived under the attention. Jonathan had a natural way with children, patient and kind, treating their ideas and questions with genuine respect. He helped Sophie with her art projects, praising her creativity and hanging her drawings in his home office. He taught Caleb to play chess, celebrating each small victory and gently explaining strategies. "Mr. Jonathan, watch this," Caleb would call out at least 10 times each visit, and Jonathan would always stop whatever he was doing to watch with full attention. One Saturday in late November, Jonathan suggested they decorate for Christmas. The children's eyes went wide with excitement. Their previous Christmas had been bleak, with Natalie barely able to afford a small tree from the grocery store lot and 1 gift each for the children. "We always decorated the weekend after Thanksgiving," Jonathan said, a hint of sadness in his voice. "Catherine loved Christmas. This house would look like something from a magazine. I haven't done it since she died, but I think it's time to bring back that tradition." He showed them to a storage room filled with boxes of decorations. Sophie gasped at the sheer volume. Lights, ornaments, garlands, figurines, wreaths. "Can we really use all of this?" she breathed. "That's the plan," Jonathan said, grinning. "We're going to make this house look magical." They spent the entire day decorating. Jonathan put on Christmas music and they worked together, laughing and singing along. Dorothy arrived with hot cocoa and cookies, settling into a chair to direct operations like a benevolent general. "That garland needs to swag more," she would call out. "Jonathan, you're putting too many lights on that section." "Sophie, darling, your ornament placement is perfect." Caleb insisted on putting ornaments on every possible surface, including several questionable locations that made everyone laugh. Sophie carefully arranged the nativity scene on the mantel, handling each figurine like it was made of glass. Natalie stood back at one point, watching her children's joy, and felt tears prick her eyes. This was what childhood should look like. Safety, laughter, tradition, love. Things they had missed for so long. Jonathan appeared beside her, following her gaze. "They're happy," he said softly. "Because of you," Natalie replied. "You've given them more than a home, Jonathan. You've given them childhood." "They've given me something too," Jonathan said. "Purpose. Laughter. A reason to decorate for Christmas again. This house has been so quiet since Catherine died, since Lily left for school. Having children's voices in it again feels right." "Do you talk to Lily often?" Natalie asked. She'd noticed he video called his daughter regularly but rarely mentioned those conversations. "Twice a week," Jonathan said. "She's doing well. Thriving actually. Better than she was here, which makes me feel both relieved and guilty. I've told her about you and the children. She's curious but guarded. I think she's worried about me and also protective of her mother's memory." "That's understandable," Natalie said. "She's 13 and lost her mother. Of course she'd be protective." "She's coming home for Christmas break in a few weeks," Jonathan said, his voice uncertain. "I hope that's okay." I hope it won't be awkward. Jonathan, this is your home and your daughter, Natalie said firmly. Of course she should be here for Christmas. We'll make sure she feels welcomed, not like we're intruding on her space. By evening, the house was transformed. Lights twinkled from every window. Garland draped the staircase. A massive tree stood in the living room, covered in ornaments that represented years of family memories. The house glowed with warmth and holiday magic. Sophie and Caleb stood in the center of the living room, turning slowly to take it all in. This is the most beautiful place in the whole world, Sophie whispered. Jonathan knelt beside her. You know what makes it beautiful? Not the decorations. People. Family. Well, that's what makes a house beautiful. And having you here makes it more beautiful than it's been in a long time. That night, after the children were asleep, Natalie found a gift bag hanging on her doorknob. Inside was a framed photo from that day. Natalie, Jonathan, and the children all laughing while trying to untangle a strand of lights. Natalie didn't remember anyone taking the picture. She suspected Dorothy. A note was attached in Jonathan's handwriting. Thank you for bringing Christmas back into this house. And into my heart. Natalie placed the photo on her nightstand, where she could see it first thing every morning. The next weekend, Jonathan took them to pick out a Christmas tree for the guest house. They spent an hour at the tree farm, the children running between rows of evergreens, debating the merits of each one. This one is too skinny, Caleb declared. That one is too fat, Sophie countered. There's no such thing as too fat for a Christmas tree, Jonathan said seriously, making Natalie laugh. They finally settled on a 6-foot Douglas fir that was full and fragrant. Jonathan bought it without hesitation, also purchasing a stand, lights, and a box of new ornaments. You don't have to do this, Natalie protested. You've already done so much. I want to, Jonathan said simply. Let me do this, please. At the guest house, they spent the afternoon decorating the tree. Jonathan showed Caleb how to string the lights evenly. He helped Sophie make paper ornaments with markers and glitter. They played Christmas music and ate pizza and laughed so much that Natalie's face hurt. When the tree was finished, Jonathan plugged in the lights. The room filled with warm, colorful glows. Sophie and Caleb applauded, and Jonathan bowed dramatically. Best tree decorating crew I've ever worked with, he announced. After the children went to bed, Natalie walked Jonathan to the door. They stood in the doorway, neither wanting the day to end. Thank you, Natalie said. For all of this. For making Christmas special for them. For us, Jonathan corrected gently. This is making Christmas special for all of us. Including me. Especially me. They stood close, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Jonathan reached up and cupped Natalie's cheek with his hand. His thumb brushed across her skin, a feather-light touch that made her shiver. Natalie, he said, his voice low. I need to tell you something. Her heart hammered in her chest. Okay. I'm developing feelings for you, Jonathan said, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back for too long. I know the timing is complicated. I know I'm your employer and there are power dynamics and you're living on my property. I know I'm still grieving Catherine and probably shouldn't be feeling this way so soon. But I can't help it. Every day I find myself looking forward to seeing you. Every text from you makes me smile. Watching you with your children, seeing how strong and brave and kind you are, it makes me feel things I didn't think I'd ever feel again. Natalie's breath caught. Jonathan. You don't have to say anything, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest. But there's no pressure. If you don't feel the same way, we'll continue as we are. Your job is secure regardless. Your home is secure regardless. I would never use my position to pressure you into anything. I just couldn't keep pretending these feelings didn't exist. Natalie looked up at this man who had saved her life, who had given her children hope and joy, who had treated her with nothing but respect and kindness. This man who made her heart race and her spirit soar. This man who looked at her like she was precious. I feel it too, she whispered. I've been trying not to, trying to keep it professional, trying to protect myself. But I feel it too, Jonathan. Every single day. His eyes lit up with hope and joy. Yeah, Natalie confirmed, smiling even as tears filled her eyes. Jonathan pulled her into a hug and Natalie melted into his embrace. He smelled like pine trees and coffee and his arms were strong and safe. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, letting the truth settle between them. So what do we do now? Natalie asked against his chest. We take it slow, Jonathan said. We figure it out together. We're honest with each other and with the kids when the time is right. We don't rush. We just see where this goes. Okay, Natalie agreed. Slow. Together. Honest. Jonathan pulled back enough to look at her face. Can I call you tomorrow? Not about work. Just to talk. I'd like that, Natalie said. After he left, Natalie leaned against the closed door, her heart full to bursting. She'd come so far from that rainy night when she'd had nothing and nowhere to go. Now she had a job, a home, hope for the future, and maybe, just maybe, love. The Christmas lights on the tree twinkled in the quiet room, and Natalie felt like she was living in a dream. A beautiful, impossible, wonderful dream that she never wanted to end. December arrived with crisp, cold days and the promise of snow. The foundation was busier than ever, with holiday assistance requests flooding in. Families needed help with gifts for children, holiday meals, winter coats, and heating bills. Natalie threw herself into organizing a massive holiday drive. She contacted local businesses for donations, coordinated with volunteers, and personally visited every family to understand their specific needs. "You're working too hard," Jonathan said one evening, finding her still at her desk at 7 o'clock. The office was empty except for them. "There's so much need," Natalie replied, rubbing her tired eyes. "I want every child on our list to have something special for Christmas." Jonathan pulled up a chair beside her. "Then let me help. 2 people can accomplish more than one." They worked side by side for the next 2 hours, creating gift lists and assigning volunteers. Their conversations flowed easily between work topics and personal ones. Jonathan told her about Catherine's last Christmas, how she'd been too weak to do much but had insisted on sitting in the living room while everyone decorated around her. "She knew it was her last one," Jonathan said quietly. "But she smiled the whole day. She said she wasn't sad because she'd had so many beautiful Christmases, and this one was just as perfect." "She sounds like she was an amazing person," Natalie said. "She was," Jonathan agreed. "And she would have liked you. She would have appreciated how you throw yourself into this work, how you see every person as an individual with a story, not just a case number." "I learned that from her," Natalie said, gesturing to the office around them. "Everything here reflects who she was. I'm just trying to live up to her legacy." Jonathan reached over and took Natalie's hand. "You're not living up to her legacy. You're creating your own. You're making this foundation into something new, something that reflects both of you. That's exactly what it should be." Their fingers intertwined naturally, comfortably. This was new, this physical affection between them. Since the night Jonathan had confessed his feelings, they'd been careful, moving slowly as promised. But small touches had become more frequent. Hands brushing, brief hugs, moments of connection that felt significant. "Have dinner with me tomorrow night," Jonathan said. "Just the 2 of us. Dorothy can watch Sophie and Caleb. We could go into the city to a nice restaurant and just be 2 people on a date. If you want that." Natalie's heart fluttered. A real date. Not a work dinner or a family meal, but an actual date. "I'd love that." "Really?" Jonathan's face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. "Because I've been nervous to ask. I didn't want to pressure you." "You're not pressuring me," Natalie assured him. "I want this too, Jonathan. I want to see where this goes between us." The next evening, Natalie dressed in a dark blue dress Dorothy had brought by earlier with a knowing smile and the words, "Every woman needs a perfect date dress, dear." Sophie and Caleb were excited about spending the evening with Grandma Dorothy, as they'd started calling her. Dorothy had embraced the title with joy, saying it made her feel young again. When Jonathan arrived to pick Natalie up, he stood in the doorway staring for a moment. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice filled with awe. "I mean, you're always beautiful, but tonight You look pretty handsome yourself," Natalie said, taking in his dark suit and the deep red tie that brought out the warmth in his eyes. They drove into the city to an elegant Italian restaurant Jonathan had reserved. The atmosphere was intimate. Soft lighting, quiet music, white tablecloths, and roses on every table. Over appetizers they talked about everything and nothing. Jonathan told her about growing up as an only child with ambitious parents, about building his company from the ground up, about meeting Catherine at a charity gala and knowing within 5 minutes that he wanted to marry her. Natalie shared her own story, growing up in a loving but struggling family, getting pregnant young with Sophie, her ex-boyfriend's inability to handle fatherhood, working 2 jobs while raising a baby alone, then getting pregnant again just before he left for good. The years of struggle, of barely making rent, of choosing between paying bills and buying groceries. "I used to be so ashamed," Natalie admitted. "Like I had failed somehow. Failed to choose the right partner, failed to keep my family together, failed to provide adequately for my children." "You didn't fail at anything," Jonathan said firmly. "You survived impossible circumstances. You kept your children fed and clothed and loved. You worked yourself to exhaustion to give them the best life you could. That's not failure. That's heroism. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. You really see me that way? I see you exactly as you are, Jonathan said. Strong, resilient, compassionate, brilliant, and beautiful inside and out. How could I see you any other way? Over the main course, Jonathan asked about her dreams for the future. I want Sophie and Caleb to go to college, Natalie said immediately. I want them to have opportunities one never had. I want them to choose their paths based on passion, not necessity. What about your dreams? Jonathan pressed. Not for your children, but for you? Natalie paused, considering. No one had asked her that in years. I want to keep doing this work, she said slowly. Helping families. Making a difference. I love what I'm doing at the foundation. It gives me purpose. But I'd also like to finish my own degree someday. I had to drop out of community college when Sophie was born. It would be nice to go back to finish what I started. What were you studying? Jonathan asked. Social work, Natalie said with a small smile. Even then, I wanted to help people. Then you should finish, Jonathan said. There are excellent online programs. I could help with the cost, and you could do coursework in the evenings after the kids are in bed. Natalie started to protest, but Jonathan held up a hand. Before you refuse, think about it. Not as charity but as an investment. You becoming a licensed social worker would make the foundation even stronger. It's a win for everyone. You're very good at that, Natalie said, laughing. At what? Making help feel like partnership instead of charity. Jonathan smiled. I learned from the best. Catherine always said people need opportunities, not pity. For dessert, they shared tiramisu, their spoons occasionally clashing as they both reached for the same bite, laughing like teenagers. As they walked back to the car, Jonathan took Natalie's hand. They strolled through the city streets, looking at holiday window displays, listening to carolers on street corners, breathing in the cold December air. I haven't felt this content in years, Jonathan admitted. Maybe not since before Catherine got sick. Is that terrible? Is it too soon? It's been 18 months since she died, Natalie said gently. And grief doesn't follow a schedule. She wouldn't want you to be alone and miserable forever. She'd want you to live, to be happy, to love again. How do you know? Jonathan asked. Because that's what love does, Natalie said simply. Real love wants the best for the other person even after they're gone. If she loved you the way you describe, she'd want you to embrace life again. Jonathan stopped walking and turned to face her. They stood under a street lamp, light snow beginning to fall around them. He cupped her face in both hands, his touch infinitely gentle. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Please, Natalie breathed. His lips met hers softly, tentatively, like he was afraid she might disappear. Natalie reached up and wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, becoming more certain, more real. Snowflakes landed on their faces, melting from the warmth between them. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, their foreheads resting against each other. Wow, Jonathan said. Yeah, Natalie agreed, laughing softly. Wow. They drove home in comfortable silence, hands clasped on the center console. When they arrived back at the estate, Dorothy met them at the main house door with a knowing smile. The children are asleep in the guest room, she said. I hope you don't mind. They wanted to watch a movie and we all got cozy. Thank you, Dorothy, Natalie said, hugging her. You're wonderful. So are you, dear, Dorothy replied, patting her cheek. Then she looked at her son. Jonathan, you look happier than I've seen you in 2 years. Hold on to that. Hold on to her. I intend to, Jonathan said quietly. After carrying the sleeping children back to the guest house and tucking them into bed, Jonathan and Natalie stood on the porch, neither wanting the night to end. Best first date ever? Jonathan said. Definitely in my top 1, Natalie teased. Jonathan laughed and pulled her into a warm hug. They stood there for a long moment, swaying slightly in the cold night air. I'm falling for you, Jonathan whispered into her hair. I know we're taking it slow, but I need you to know. I'm falling and I'm not scared. Natalie pulled back to look at his face. I'm falling too. And it's terrifying and wonderful all at once. Then we'll fall together, Jonathan said, kissing her forehead. And we'll figure out where we land. After he left, Natalie prepared for bed with a light heart. She looked at her children sleeping peacefully, thought about the amazing man who had just kissed her in the snow, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the strange, wonderful turn her life had taken. From rock bottom to this. From having nothing to having everything that mattered. Love really did lead the way, just like she'd always told her children. Kindness really did create miracles. And tomorrow this beautiful new chapter would continue. The Monday before Christmas, Natalie arrived at the office to find Jonathan already there, looking haggard and stressed. His hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, and coffee cups littered his desk. "Jonathan, what's wrong?" Natalie asked immediately. He looked up, his face drawn with worry. "Richard Turner. My former business partner. He's launching a hostile takeover of my company." Natalie's stomach dropped. Jonathan's software company was separate from the foundation, but it funded much of the foundation's work. If he lost the company, everything they'd built could be in jeopardy. "Explain it to me," Natalie said, sitting across from him. "Tell me everything." Jonathan ran his hands through his hair. "Richard and I started the company together 15 years ago. We built it from nothing. But 5 years ago we had a falling out over business practices. He wanted to cut corners, reduce employee benefits to maximize profits. I wouldn't agree. We bought out his shares and he left angry. And now he's trying to take it back?" Natalie asked. "He's been quietly buying up shares from other investors," Jonathan explained. "He's convinced them I'm not managing the company effectively. He's calling for a vote to remove me as CEO and install himself instead. The vote happens in 3 days at our annual shareholder meeting." "Can he do that?" Natalie asked. "If he has the votes, yes," Jonathan said grimly. "I own 42% of the company. Richard now controls 38%. The remaining 20% is split among 6 smaller investors. If Richard convinces just 11% to vote with him, he wins." "What would happen if he takes over?" Natalie asked. Jonathan's jaw tightened. "He'd dismantle everything Catherine and I built. The employee programs, the profit sharing, the ethical sourcing. And he's made it clear he thinks the foundation is a waste of money. He'd cut our funding to the bare minimum required by our charter." Natalie's mind raced. All those families they were helping. The Martinez family, the Nguyen family, the dozens of others who depended on the foundation's support. The programs they'd expanded, the dreams they'd made possible. All of it threatened. "What can I do to help?" Natalie asked immediately. "Natalie, you don't have to," Jonathan started. "Yes, I do," she interrupted firmly. "This foundation is important. Those families are important. You're important. Tell me what you need." Over the next 3 days, Natalie became Jonathan's right hand. She helped him organize financial documents to prove the company's strong performance. She coordinated conference calls with investors, making sure Jonathan had all the data he needed at his fingertips. She even reached out to employees, gathering testimonials about how Jonathan's leadership had positively impacted their lives. They worked late every night, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning. Dorothy brought them meals. The foundation staff pitched in, making calls and gathering information. Even Helen and Tom spent their evenings helping compile evidence of the foundation's positive impact. "Look at this," Tom said, bringing in a thick folder. "Letters from every family we've helped in the past 2 years. Personal stories about how the foundation changed their lives. If the investors see this, they'll understand why it matters." Natalie threw her arms around him. "Tom, you're brilliant." The night before the shareholder meeting, Jonathan sat in his office looking defeated. "What if it's not enough? What if we lose?" Natalie knelt beside his chair. "Then we start over. We find another way to fund the foundation. We keep helping people because that's who you are, Jonathan. Success or failure in business doesn't change your character or your commitment to doing good." Jonathan pulled her close. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "You stopped in the rain," Natalie said simply. "You chose kindness when you could have driven by. That's who you are. And that's why you're going to win this fight. Because people recognize genuine goodness." The shareholder meeting was held at a downtown hotel in a large conference room. Natalie sat in the back, her heart pounding as Jonathan presented his case. He spoke about the company's financial success, about employee satisfaction and retention, about ethical business practices that had earned them industry recognition. Then Richard Turner spoke, all smooth charm and calculated arguments. He painted Jonathan as emotional and financially reckless, the foundation as a drain on profits, and himself as the practical choice for the company's future. "Mr. Pierce is a good man," Richard said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "But good men don't always make good CEOs. He's been distracted since his wife's death. The company needs focused leadership, not someone running a charity on company time." Natalie felt rage burning in her chest. How dare he use Catherine's death as ammunition? How dare he question Jonathan's leadership? When it came time for questions, one of the smaller investors, a woman named Susan Park, stood up. "Mr. Turner, you say the foundation is a waste of resources," Susan said. "But I've done my own research. The Pierce Foundation has helped over 400 families in 5 years. It's generated positive press and community goodwill that money can't buy. Our company is respected not just for our products but for our values. That's Jonathan Pierce's legacy. What's yours?" Another investor stood, a man named George Mitchell. "I've been with this company since the beginning. I watched Richard Turner push for profit margins that would have required laying off 30% of our workforce. I watched Jonathan Pierce refuse and find another way. Our employees are loyal because they're treated well. That's good business, not charity." One by one, investors stood to speak in Jonathan's favor. Some mentioned personal interactions with him, his integrity and vision. Others cited the company's strong performance numbers and industry reputation. Even those who admitted they'd considered voting for Richard ultimately sided with Jonathan. When the vote was counted, Jonathan won with 63% of shares in his favor. Richard Turner had lost decisively. As the meeting adjourned, Richard approached Jonathan, his face twisted with anger. "You may have won today, but this company should have been mine. I built it just as much as you did." "No," Jonathan said calmly. "You helped start it. But Catherine and I built it into something that matters. There's a difference between making money and making a difference. You never understood that." Richard stormed out, and Jonathan sagged with relief. Natalie rushed forward and hugged him tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "You won." "We did it," Jonathan corrected. "I couldn't have gotten through this without you." That evening, they celebrated at the main house with Dorothy and the children. Sophie and Caleb didn't fully understand what had happened, but they understood that Mr. Jonathan had won something important and that everyone was happy. "Does this mean we can keep our house?" Sophie asked, her young face serious. Jonathan knelt down to her level. "Sweetheart, you were never going to lose your house. No matter what happened with my company, you and your mom and Caleb were always going to be safe here. I promised you that, and I keep my promises." "You're a good man," Sophie said solemnly, then threw her arms around his neck. Later, after the children were in bed, Jonathan walked Natalie back to the guest house. The December night was clear and cold, stars brilliant overhead. "This week was terrifying," Jonathan admitted. "Not just because of the business but because I realized how much I could lose. Not just the company but the ability to support the foundation, to help families, to provide for you and the children. I felt like I was failing everyone." "But you didn't fail," Natalie said. "You fought for what mattered. You showed everyone who you truly are. That's not failure. That's courage." Jonathan cupped her face in his hands. "I love you, Natalie. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I love you. You've become so important to me, and not just because you're incredible at your job or wonderful with your children, but because you make me want to be better. You make me feel alive again." Natalie felt tears streaming down her face. "I love you too, Jonathan. I've been trying not to fall this hard this fast, but I can't help it. You're everything I never knew I needed." They kissed under the stars, and it felt like the world was falling away, leaving only the two of them in this perfect moment. "I want to do this right," Jonathan said when they finally pulled apart. "I want to meet your family, introduce you to Lily properly, make sure everyone in our lives knows how serious I am about you." "Lily comes home in 3 days," Natalie reminded him. "Are you sure you're ready for that? For her to meet me and the children?" "I'm sure," Jonathan said. "She needs to see me happy again. And she needs to know that loving you doesn't mean I love her mother any less. Love doesn't divide. It multiplies." Natalie kissed him again, pouring all her feelings into it. When they finally said goodnight, she floated back into the guest house feeling like she was living in a dream. Against all odds, she had found love. Real, deep, meaningful love with a man who valued kindness above all else. A man who had stopped in the rain and changed her life forever. Lily Pierce arrived home on a Thursday afternoon, 3 days before Christmas. Jonathan picked her up from the airport alone, giving father and daughter time to reconnect before introducing her to the new people in his life. Natalie watched from the guest house window as Jonathan's car pulled into the driveway. A tall, slender girl with blonde hair like her mother's emerged, hugging her father tightly. Even from a distance, Natalie could see the love between them, and it made her heart ache with both happiness and nervousness. "Is that Mr. Jonathan's daughter?" Sophie asked, peering out the window beside her mother. "Yes, baby. That's Lily," Natalie confirmed. "Remember, she's been away at school. She might be a little shy at first. Let's give her some space to settle in." But 2 hours later there was a knock at the door. Jonathan stood there with Lily beside him. The girl was beautiful, with her mother's features and her father's serious gray eyes. She looked at Natalie with cautious curiosity. "Lily, this is Natalie Brooks, the foundation manager I've told you about," Jonathan said gently. "And these are her children, Sophie and Caleb." "Hello," Lily said politely, but her voice was cool. "Dad has mentioned you on our calls." "It's wonderful to meet you," Natalie said warmly, not pushing for physical contact. "Your father talks about you constantly. He's so proud of you." Lily's expression softened slightly. "He said you're good at running the foundation. That it's better than it's been since." She trailed off. "Since your mother ran it," Natalie finished gently. "She set an incredible standard. I'm just trying to honor what she built." They stood awkwardly for a moment until Caleb, bless his 5-year-old lack of social awareness, walked right up to Lily. "Are you a princess?" he asked seriously. "Because you look like one." Lily blinked, then laughed, and the tension broke. "No, not a princess. Just a regular person." "Can you play chess?" Caleb asked. "Your dad is teaching me." "I can play chess," Lily confirmed, smiling now. "Maybe I could teach you some moves my mom taught me." "Okay," Caleb said, taking her hand and leading her toward the living room where the chess set was already arranged. Jonathan and Natalie exchanged relieved glances. Sophie watched Lily with awe, clearly impressed by this older girl who looked like something from a storybook. "Can I show you my art?" Sophie asked shyly. "I'd love to see it," Lily said, and she seemed to mean it. For the next hour, Lily played chess with Caleb and looked through Sophie's artwork, praising the children's efforts with genuine kindness. She was polite to Natalie, asking appropriate questions about the foundation and seeming interested in the answers. But there was a guardedness there, a wall that Natalie completely understood. This was the girl who had lost her mother and been sent away to school while her father grieved. She was protecting herself and her father's memory of her mother. That evening, after Natalie put her children to bed, she found Jonathan sitting on the porch of the guest house, looking troubled. "She likes your kids," he said. "But she's not sure about us. About you and me." "I know," Natalie said, sitting beside him. "And that's okay. She needs time. We can take as much time as she needs." "She said she doesn't want to forget her mother," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "She said she's worried that if I'm happy with someone new, it means Catherine didn't matter." Natalie's heart broke for this confused, grieving girl. "Tomorrow let me talk to her. Just the two of us. I think I might be able to help her understand." The next morning, Natalie found Lily reading in the main house library. The girl looked up when Natalie entered, her expression wary. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Natalie asked gently. Lily nodded, closing her book. Natalie sat in a chair across from her. "I want you to know something important. I will never try to replace your mother. No one could replace her. The foundation she built, the love she gave your father, the daughter she raised, those things are her legacy forever." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Then why are you here? Why are you with my dad?" "Because love doesn't end when someone dies," Natalie said softly. "Your mother loved your father so much that she wanted him to be happy, even after she was gone. Real love is generous like that. It doesn't hoard happiness. It spreads it." "But what if he forgets her?" Lily whispered. "He won't," Natalie said firmly. "Do you want to know how I know? Because he talks about her constantly. He tells me stories about her kindness, her passion, her love. He shows me photos. He makes sure I understand who she was and how much she meant. That's not forgetting. That's honoring." "But you're in her office, in her home," Lily said, fresh tears falling. "I'm in the space she created," Natalie corrected. "But I'm not trying to fill it the way she did. I have my own way of doing things, my own story. Your mom was the foundation's heart. I'm trying to be its hands, carrying on her work in my own way. We're different people, but we both want the same thing, to help others." Lily wiped her eyes. "I miss her so much." "Of course you do," Natalie said, moving to sit beside the girl. "You always will. And that's beautiful. Missing her means she mattered. Grieving means you loved her deeply. Don't ever apologize for that." "Does it get easier?" Lily asked in a small voice. "It gets different," Natalie said honestly. "The sharp pain becomes a dull ache. The ache becomes a tender spot in your heart. You learn to live with it. You learn that you can be sad about losing her and happy about other things at the same time. Both feelings can exist together." Lily was quiet for a long moment. "Do you love my dad?" Natalie took a deep breath. "Yes, I do. But that doesn't diminish what he had with your mother. She was his first love, his wife, the mother of his child. Nothing changes that. I'm something different. Something new. And if you can't accept that right now, I understand. Your dad will always put you first, and so will I. You would? Lily asked, looking surprised. Absolutely, Natalie said. You're his daughter. You're the most important person in his world. I would never want to come between you or make you uncomfortable in your own home. If you need your dad to yourself for this visit, I can step back. My feelings aren't more important than yours. Lily stared at her for a long moment, then something in her expression shifted. You really mean that, don't you? Every word, Natalie confirmed. I think, Lily said slowly, I think my mom would have liked you. She always wanted people to be happy. And she hated when people were mean or selfish. You're not either of those things. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. That means more to me than you know. Can I ask you something? Lily said. Anything. Will you tell me about when you needed help? Dad said you were homeless. What was that like? So Natalie told her story, the job loss, the eviction, standing in the rain with her children, having nowhere to go. She didn't sugarcoat it or make it dramatic. She just told the truth. And your dad stopped, Natalie concluded. He didn't have to. He could have driven by. But he stopped and he helped and he changed our lives. That's who your father is. That's the man your mother loved. And that's why I love him too. Lily was crying openly now. He was so sad after Mom died. I've never seen him like that. It scared me. I thought he'd never be happy again. He's healing, Natalie said gently. Not forgetting but healing. There's a difference. Lily nodded, then impulsively hugged Natalie. Thank you for making him smile again. Thank you for helping at the foundation. And thank you for not trying to be my mom. I could never be your mom, Natalie said, hugging her back. But maybe I could be your friend. If you'd like that. I'd like that, Lily said softly. That afternoon, Jonathan found them all together. Lily showing Sophie how to paint watercolors, Caleb building a Lego castle nearby, and Natalie preparing hot cocoa in the kitchen. His face lit up with such joy that Natalie's heart swelled. Everything okay? He asked, pulling Natalie aside. Better than okay, Natalie confirmed. We talked. Really talked. She's a wonderful girl, Jonathan. You and Catherine raised someone special. She told me you were kind, Jonathan said. She said she understands now why I care about you. That was huge for her. That evening they all had dinner together at the main house. Dorothy joined them, delighted to have her granddaughter home. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and stories. After the children went to bed, Jonathan walked Natalie back to the guest house. The Christmas lights twinkled around them and snow had started to fall gently. This has been the best Christmas season since Catherine died, Jonathan said. Having Lily home, having you and your children here, seeing everyone together. It feels right. It does feel right, Natalie agreed. They reached the guest house porch and Jonathan pulled her close. I know we've been taking things slow. But Natalie, I don't want to wait anymore. I know what I feel. I know what I want. Natalie's heart began to race. What do you want? You, Jonathan said simply. Always. Officially. I want to build a life with you. I want to blend our families. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're there. I want to face whatever comes together. Jonathan, Natalie breathed. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight, he said quickly. I know that's too fast. But I'm asking you to be my girlfriend officially. To let me tell everyone in our lives how important you are to me. To stop being cautious and just be together. What do you say? Natalie reached up and pulled him down for a kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, she smiled. Yes. Absolutely yes. I want all of that too. They stood on the porch for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the snow fall. Inside, Natalie's children slept peacefully. Across the grounds, Lily and Dorothy were probably settling in for the night. Everyone she cared about was safe, warm, and happy. This was what love was supposed to feel like, Natalie realized. Not desperate or uncertain, but solid and real. Built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. Jonathan had given her so much, but more than the material things, he'd given her hope. He'd shown her that kindness still existed in the world. That good things could happen to good people. And now, standing in his arms with snow falling around them and Christmas just days away, Natalie felt like the luckiest woman alive. Christmas morning arrived cold and bright. Natalie woke to Sophie and Caleb jumping on her bed, squealing with excitement. It's Christmas. It's Christmas. Santa came, they shouted. Natalie laughed and pulled them into a hug, their joy infectious. She'd stayed up late the night before, arranging presents under the tree that Jonathan had insisted on providing. He'd bought thoughtful gifts for each child. Art supplies for Sophie, a complete Lego set for Caleb, along with new clothes, books, and toys. "Can we go to the big house?" Sophie asked. "Mr. Jonathan said we'd have Christmas breakfast together." "Let's get dressed first," Natalie said, her own excitement building. 30 minutes later, they walked through the snow-covered grounds to the main house. The front door opened before they could knock, and Jonathan stood there in pajamas and a robe, his hair adorably messy, grinning like a kid. "Merry Christmas," he exclaimed, scooping Caleb up in a hug and ruffling Sophie's hair. His eyes met Natalie's over the children's heads, warm and full of promise. "Merry Christmas, love." "Merry Christmas," Natalie replied, her heart full. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and coffee. Dorothy was in the kitchen making pancakes and bacon. Lily sat at the kitchen table in her own pajamas, looking more relaxed than Natalie had seen her since she arrived. "Merry Christmas, everyone," Lily called out, waving. After a huge breakfast, they gathered in the living room where presents were piled under the enormous tree. The children's eyes went wide. "All of these are for us?" Sophie whispered. "Some are for everyone," Jonathan corrected. "But yes, many are for you too." They spent the next hour opening presents. The children squealed with delight over every gift. Lily received expensive electronics and a new wardrobe. Dorothy got a beautiful scarf and a first edition of her favorite book. Natalie was overwhelmed when she opened her gifts. A laptop for her online classes, beautiful jewelry, and gift certificates for the spa Dorothy had mentioned she liked. "This is too much," Natalie protested. "It's not enough," Jonathan countered. "Nothing could be enough to thank you for what you've brought to my life." When all the presents were opened and the children were playing with their new toys, Jonathan stood up nervously. "There's one more thing," he said. "Actually, I need to do this properly." He walked over to where Sophie and Caleb were playing. "Can I talk to you two for a minute?" The children looked up curiously. Jonathan sat down on the floor with them, his expression serious but kind. "I have a very important question to ask you both," he said. "I love your mom very much. And I've come to love you too as well. I know I'm not your dad and I would never try to replace him. But I'd like to be someone important in your life. Someone who loves you and takes care of you and is always there for you." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Like a dad?" "Like a stepdad," Jonathan clarified. "Would that be okay with you? If I asked your mom to marry me?" Caleb launched himself at Jonathan, hugging him tightly. Yes. You can marry Mama." Sophie was more reserved, but her smile was genuine. "You make Mama happy. And you're nice to us. So yes, you can marry her." Jonathan's eyes were misty as he hugged both children. Then he stood and walked over to where Natalie sat frozen on the couch, her hand over her mouth. He got down on one knee and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a beautiful ring, a simple band with a single perfect diamond, elegant and timeless. "Natalie Brooks," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "You came into my life when I thought happiness was over. You brought light back into this house, purpose back into my work and love back into my heart. You're an incredible mother, a brilliant professional, and the kindest person I've ever known. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Natalie's face. Behind her, she heard Dorothy crying happy tears. Lily was smiling, her own eyes wet. Sophie and Caleb were bouncing with excitement. "Yes," Natalie said, her voice breaking. "Yes, Jonathan. I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply while the children cheered and Dorothy clapped. When they finally pulled apart, Natalie was laughing and crying at the same time. "I can't believe this is real," she said. 6 weeks ago I was standing in the rain with nothing. Now I'm engaged to the most wonderful man I've ever met." "Believe it," Jonathan said, kissing her again. "This is real. This is forever. This is us." The rest of Christmas Day was magical. They cooked dinner together, played games, watched Christmas movies, and simply enjoyed being a family. Lily was sweet with Sophie and Caleb, teaching them card games and helping them build with their new toys. Dorothy told stories about Christmases past, keeping Catherine's memory alive without making it sad. As evening fell and the children dozed on the couch, Jonathan pulled Natalie into the garden where they'd first acknowledged their feelings. The roses were dormant for winter, but the garden was still beautiful, covered in fresh snow and twinkling with tiny lights Jonathan had strung through the branches. I want to get married soon, Jonathan said. I don't want to wait. I found the woman I want to spend my life with. Why should we delay? What about your board? The foundation? Won't people talk about how fast this is? Natalie asked. Let them talk, Jonathan said. The people who matter understand. My mother is thrilled. Lily has given her blessing. Your children are excited. Everyone at the foundation loves you. Who else matters? My mother, Natalie said quietly. I haven't spoken to her in 3 years. Jonathan looked surprised. Why not? Natalie sighed. She blamed me for getting pregnant young, for choosing the wrong man, for all my struggles. She said I'd ruined my life. When I asked her for help when I was being evicted, she told me I'd made my bed and needed to lie in it. I haven't called her since. Do you want to reconcile? Jonathan asked gently. I don't know, Natalie admitted. Part of me does. She's my mother. But part of me is still so hurt. Then let's invite her to the wedding, Jonathan suggested. Not because you have to, but because you should have the chance to show her how wrong she was. You didn't ruin your life. You built a beautiful one despite incredible obstacles. Let her see that. Natalie considered this. You really think I should reach out? I think forgiveness is powerful, Jonathan said. And I think she might regret what she said. People say terrible things when they're scared or angry. Maybe she needs to see that you're not just surviving but thriving. Maybe she needs a chance to be proud of you. How did you get so wise? Natalie asked, leaning into him. I had an excellent teacher, Jonathan said, kissing the top of her head. Catherine always believed in second chances. She said everyone deserves the opportunity to do better, to be better. I'm just trying to live by her principles. That night, lying in bed with her engagement ring catching the moonlight, Natalie made a decision. She would call her mother. She would extend an olive branch. Not because she had forgotten the hurt, but because she wanted to choose love over anger, hope over resentment. She wanted her mother to see that kindness had saved her. That accepting help without pride had changed everything. That sometimes the best thing you can do is say yes when good people offer assistance. And maybe, just maybe, her mother would be proud of the life she'd built and the man she'd found. A man who led with his heart, who valued people over profits, who stopped in the rain to help a stranger. A man who had given her and her children a home, but more importantly, had given them hope. 6 months passed like a beautiful dream. Natalie enrolled in online classes to finish her social work degree. The foundation flourished under her leadership, expanding to help over 600 families. Sophie and Caleb thrived in school, making friends and excelling in their studies. Lily came home for spring break and summer vacation, each visit strengthening her bond with Natalie and the children. And through it all, Jonathan stood beside Natalie, steady and loving, proving every day that his commitment was real. The wedding was planned for early June, in the garden where Catherine had planted her roses. Jonathan wanted to honor his late wife by marrying his new love in the place she had created, believing Catherine would approve. She'd want this garden to have happy memories again, Jonathan said. She'd want it to be a place of celebration, not just mourning. 2 weeks before the wedding, Natalie finally called her mother. Patricia Brooks answered on the third ring. Hello. Mom, it's Natalie, she said, her heart pounding. There was a long silence. Then, Natalie? Is everything okay? Are the children all right? We're fine, Natalie assured her. Better than fine. Mom, I'm getting married. I wanted to invite you to the wedding. Another silence. Married? To who? When did this happen? Natalie took a deep breath and told her story. The eviction, standing in the rain, Jonathan stopping to help, the job at the foundation, falling in love, the proposal. She didn't leave anything out. When she finished, her mother was crying. I'm so sorry, Patricia said through her tears. I'm so sorry for what I said to you, for turning you away when you needed me. I was angry and scared and disappointed, but that's no excuse. You're my daughter. I should have helped you. You were hurt, Natalie said, surprised at how easily the forgiveness came. I understand that now. But you survived without me, Patricia said. You raised those babies and worked hard and made a good life. And now you found a good man. You did all of that without me. I did, Natalie agreed. But I'd like you to be part of what comes next. If you want to be. I want to, Patricia said immediately. I want to meet this man who was smart enough to see how special you are. I want to see my grandchildren. I want to be there when you get married. Please, Natalie. Let me be there. The wedding is June 10th, Natalie said. Here's the address. Patricia arrived a week before the wedding, nervous and uncertain. She was a small woman in her early 60s, her hair gray, her face lined with worry and regret. When she saw Natalie, she burst into tears. "My baby," she whispered, hugging Natalie tightly. "My beautiful, strong baby. I'm so proud of you." Meeting Sophie and Caleb was emotional. The children were cautious at first, but Patricia won them over with gentle patience and genuine interest in their lives. She sat for hours looking at Sophie's artwork, praising every piece. She played endless games with Caleb, never once seeming bored or impatient. "They're wonderful," Patricia told Natalie. "You raised them so well. I can't believe I missed so much of their lives." "You're here now," Natalie said simply. "That's what matters." Meeting Jonathan was the most nervous Patricia had been. But Jonathan greeted her warmly, thanking her for coming and treating her with the same kindness he showed everyone. "Mrs. Brooks, I want you to know that I consider it an honor to marry your daughter," Jonathan said. "She's the most remarkable woman I've ever met. You raised someone truly special." Patricia cried again, apologizing for the years she'd wasted being angry instead of proud. The day of the wedding arrived warm and sunny. The garden was in full bloom, roses of every color creating a stunning backdrop. White chairs were arranged in rows, an arch covered in flowers stood at the altar, and soft music played from hidden speakers. Natalie stood in the main house bedroom, looking at herself in the mirror. Her wedding dress was ivory, simple and elegant, chosen with Dorothy's help. Her hair was styled in soft curls, and she wore the pearl necklace Jonathan had given her as a wedding gift. Sophie and Lily, both serving as junior bridesmaids, wore matching lavender dresses. They looked beautiful together, like the sisters they were becoming. "You look like a princess," Sophie breathed. "The most beautiful princess ever." "Your dad is going to cry when he sees you," Lily added, grinning. "He's already crying actually. I saw him wiping his eyes when I went to check on him." A knock sounded at the door. Patricia entered, her own eyes red from happy tears. "It's almost time, sweetheart. Are you ready?" "More ready than I've ever been," Natalie said. Dorothy had offered to walk Natalie down the aisle, but Natalie had asked her mother. Patricia had sobbed when she heard, overwhelmed by the grace of being included in such an important moment. Now, standing at the edge of the garden with her mother beside her, Natalie saw Jonathan waiting at the altar. He wore a charcoal suit with a green tie that brought out his eyes. Beside him stood Tom from the foundation as his best man, and Caleb as the ring bearer, taking his job very seriously. The music changed and everyone stood. Natalie and Patricia began walking down the aisle. She saw the faces of people she'd come to love. Helen and Andrea and Carlos from the foundation, neighbors from the estate, investors who'd stood by Jonathan during the takeover attempt, her children's teachers, families the foundation had helped. But mostly she saw Jonathan, his eyes locked on hers, tears streaming down his face, his smile so wide and genuine that it took her breath away. When they reached the altar, Patricia kissed Natalie's cheek and whispered, "Be happy, baby. You deserve it." Jonathan took Natalie's hands, and they stood facing each other while the minister began the ceremony. "Love is patient and kind," the minister said. "It does not envy or boast. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails." Natalie thought about how true that was. Love had brought them together. Love had made Jonathan stop in the rain. Love had given her the courage to accept help. Love had healed Jonathan's grief and given her hope. Love had blended their families and created something new and beautiful. When it came time for the vows, Jonathan went first, his voice strong despite his tears. "Natalie, you saved my life just as much as I saved yours. You brought light back into my darkness. You showed me that loving again doesn't diminish what I had before but adds to it. You're my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. I promise to cherish you, to support your dreams, to be a good stepfather to Sophie and Caleb, and to spend every day making sure you know how loved you are." Natalie's own tears flowed freely as she said her vows. "Jonathan, you stopped when others would have driven by. You saw me at my lowest and chose kindness. You gave me hope when I had none, opportunity when I needed it most, and love when I thought I'd never find it. You're the best man I've ever known. I promise to love you fiercely, to support you always, to honor Catherine's memory, and to build a beautiful life with you and our children. By the power vested in me," the minister said, smiling, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jonathan, you may kiss your bride." Jonathan pulled Natalie close and kissed her deeply while everyone cheered. Sophie and Caleb clapped enthusiastically. Lily wiped her eyes, smiling. Dorothy cried happy tears. Patricia beamed with pride. The reception was held on the estate grounds, under a large tent strung with lights. There was dinner and dancing and laughter and joy. Natalie danced with her new husband, then with her son, then with her mother. She watched Jonathan dance with Lily, holding his daughter close and whispering something that made her smile. Later, as the sun set and the party continued around them, Jonathan pulled Natalie aside to the rose garden. "Are you happy?" he asked, holding both her hands. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Natalie said honestly. "A year ago I was standing in the rain with nowhere to go. Today I'm married to the most wonderful man in the world. It feels like a dream." "It's not a dream," Jonathan assured her. "It's real. And it's forever." They stood among Catherine's roses, which seemed to bloom even more beautifully than before, as if blessing this union. The garden that had been a place of grief had become a place of celebration, just as Jonathan had hoped. "Catherine would have loved this," Jonathan said softly, looking around. "She would have loved you. She always said love multiplies, never divides. I understand that now. Loving you doesn't diminish what I had with her. It honors it by showing that the love she taught me to give can grow and be shared with someone new." "I hope she knows," Natalie said. "I hope she knows we're taking care of her foundation, raising Lily with love, and living the kind of life she believed in." "She knows," Jonathan said with certainty. "I feel it every time I'm in this garden. She's at peace and she's happy for us." They kissed softly as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. The months that followed were filled with joy and purpose. Natalie officially adopted Jonathan's last name, becoming Natalie Pierce. She finished her degree in social work with honors, and Jonathan threw a celebration that rivaled their wedding. The foundation expanded even further, opening a second location to serve more families. Sophie excelled in school, her artistic talents nurtured by private lessons Jonathan arranged. She won a citywide art competition, and her painting hung proudly in the main house. Caleb joined a chess club and discovered a love for mathematics, spending hours working through problems with Jonathan's patient guidance. Lily returned home for summer vacation and announced she wanted to transfer back to local schools. "I want to be home," she said simply. "With my family. All of it." The blended family thrived. Lily became like a big sister to Sophie and Caleb, helping with homework and teaching them about everything from makeup to video games. She started volunteering at the foundation, working directly with children from struggling families, carrying on her mother's legacy in her own way. Patricia became a regular visitor, rebuilding her relationship with her daughter and grandchildren. She and Dorothy became fast friends, often sitting together at family dinners, swapping stories and laughing like they'd known each other for decades. On the first anniversary of the day Jonathan had stopped in the rain, the family gathered in the garden for a small ceremony. They planted a new rose bush together, each person adding a handful of soil. "This rose represents new beginnings," Jonathan said, his arm around Natalie's waist. "It represents the moment everything changed. The moment kindness created a miracle. The moment you stopped," Natalie added, looking up at her husband with love. "When you could have driven by, you stopped. You chose compassion over convenience. You chose to help." Sophie stepped forward, her young face serious. "My teacher asked us to write about a hero. I wrote about Mr. Jonathan. I mean Dad." She still sometimes slipped, but Jonathan never corrected her. He said any name she called him was perfect as long as it came with love. "What did you write?" Jonathan asked, kneeling down to her level. "I wrote that heroes don't wear capes or fight bad guys," Sophie said. "Real heroes stop in the rain. Real heroes help people who need it. Real heroes make families happy." Jonathan pulled her into a tight hug, his eyes wet with tears. "You're going to make me cry at my own garden party, sweetheart?" "It's okay to cry when you're happy," Caleb piped up, repeating something Dorothy had told him. "Grandma Dorothy says tears are just love leaking out." Everyone laughed and the moment was perfect. The sun shone down on the garden, the new rose bush stood straight and strong, and the family that had been built from kindness and hope gathered close together. That evening, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Natalie and Jonathan sat on their bedroom balcony overlooking the estate grounds. The guest house stood in the distance, lights glowing warmly. They'd offered it to Patricia recently and she'd accepted, moving closer to be part of their lives. "Do you ever think about that night?" Natalie asked. "That rainy night when everything changed?" "Every single day," Jonathan replied. "I think about how close I came to just driving home. I was tired, frustrated from the board meeting, lost in my own thoughts. I almost didn't see you. Another few seconds and I would have passed by. But you didn't," Natalie said. "You saw us. You stopped. You helped. Best decision I ever made," Jonathan said, kissing her temple. You and those incredible children saved me just as much as I saved you. You gave me purpose again. You gave me love again. You gave me a reason to keep going. We saved each other, Natalie said simply. That's what love does. It sees people who need help and says yes. It opens doors and hearts. It multiplies instead of divides. It leads with hope instead of fear. She looked out over the grounds thinking about how far they'd come. From that desperate moment in the rain to this beautiful life they'd built together. It wasn't always perfect. They had challenges, disagreements, moments of stress and worry. But through it all, they had each other. They had their blended family. They had love. The foundation continued to thrive, helping more families every month. Natalie made sure that every person who came through their doors felt seen, valued, and supported. She remembered what it felt like to be desperate, to need help, to be at rock bottom. And she made sure no one ever felt ashamed for needing assistance. Hope and love, she would tell new families. Those are the things that matter most. Hope that things can get better and love that helps make it happen. We're here to provide both. Jonathan watched his wife work with admiration and pride. She'd taken Catherine's foundation and made it even stronger, adding her own unique perspective and passion. The two women he'd loved most in his life had both shared the same heart for helping others. He felt blessed beyond measure. As the stars came out above them, Natalie leaned into her husband's embrace, feeling completely at peace. Thank you, she whispered. For what? Jonathan asked. For stopping in the rain. For seeing us. For being exactly who you are. For showing my children what a good man looks like. For loving me even when I was broken. For giving us a home. For everything. Thank you for accepting help, Jonathan replied. Thank you for being brave enough to say yes when you could have said no. Thank you for bringing joy back into my life. Thank you for loving Lily like she's yours. Thank you for being you, Natalie. Thank you for being mine. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and thinking about the beautiful, unexpected journey that had brought them together. A journey that started with a rainstorm, an eviction, and a moment of kindness from a stranger. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to hear more stories about hope, love, and second chances. Share in the comments what you would do if you saw someone in need. Would you stop or would you drive by? Your answer might inspire someone else to choose kindness. Love had led them through the darkness and into the light. Kindness had built bridges where there had been walls. Hope had transformed despair into joy. And acceptance of help, without pride or shame, had made miracles possible. This was their story. A story of two broken people who found healing in each other. A story of children who found safety and happiness. A story of a man who chose to stop in the rain. A story of a woman who chose to say yes to help. Most importantly, it was a story that proved that kindness always matters. That helping others helps ourselves. That love really does multiply when we're brave enough to share it. And they lived happily, purposefully, and gratefully ever after. Not because life was perfect, but because they faced it together with open hearts and helping hands, spreading the same kindness that had saved them to everyone they met. In the end, that rainy night wasn't just about finding shelter from a storm. It was about finding home. And home, they discovered, wasn't just a place. It was the people you loved, the purpose you served, and the choice to keep showing up with compassion, day after day after day.